My name is Cynthia. My top 10 tips, my series. Sorry about the noise in the background. It's my parrot, and you'll probably hear him during this. I'm going to be talking today about breeding parrots. I have bred parrots in the past, large and small, and if you have a parrot for a long period of time, you might start thinking about doing that, because you're not ashamed of having sex right in front of you. You have more than one in a cage. But first, before we get started on it, you must realize that once you start breeding, once you start bringing another parrot into the cage with another parrot that you love, maybe tamed and holds a lot, you most likely are going to lose the tameness of that parrot, because that parrot now is going to be only thinking about the parrot that's living with it in the cage, not you. You might get bit down the road when you try to take that parrot out. And the other parrot might attack you for the same reason that they think you might harm that other parrot. So be careful. If you really love a parrot and you want to keep it tame and you want to keep it as your pet, you might not want to consider breeding it. But let's say you started thinking about breeding parrots. Now, why do you want to breed a parrot? Do you want to have more parrots of your own? Do you want to make money? Let's see, what other ones? You love that bird so much that you want to make it happy by having another parrot with it? Those are reasons, maybe. I'm sure there's other reasons to breed. Maybe you just want to try it. Fun. I find it to be very fun. I enjoyed it. And it's rewarding. It's also heartbreaking, and I'll talk about it in a little while. Now, as far as money, you're not going to probably make a lot of money unless you have a lot of parrots breeding, because individually you're going to be putting money into them, feeding them. After they're born, babies, you got to take care of them, your time involved. You're not going to make a whole lot of money on them. So money, if that's a reason why, I would put that aside unless you have a lot of parrots and you can do a full-time taking care of them. Now, what about the kind of birds you're going to get? There's a lot of different parrots that you can breed easily, and I start out with cockatiels, lovebirds, finches. Those are real fun and easy to breed. The larger birds are a little more money because you got to buy two and then have them in the cage, and obviously you got to take care of them too. So if you start out with just a small bird, it's usually the best way to start out trying to breed and find out whether you like it or not. Now, what about the time involved? Well, before you start breeding them, you got to make sure they're healthy, and make sure you feed them fresh fruits and vegetables on a regular basis. Regular food to keep them healthy. Give them extra calcium, especially the mother. She's going to need extra calcium. And you're going to have to spend time with them afterwards. Now, during the breeding process itself, you don't really hang around with them very much. They should be kept in a darker room, actually, and that's all they think about is each other and wanting to have sex, more or less, and have the babies. So you're not going to be spending time with them as a pet. Again, if you want to keep a pet, you should not put them in a breeding program at all. Now, what about cages? Well, most of the time for breeding, you have them in a wire cage. And you can buy these cages online, on the internet. You can make them yourself. I know friends who do keep them. You can buy them used. And you can also breed them in the regular cage, their own cage if you want. But either one is okay. But the wired cage is usually more conducive because it's a little bit smaller, and you put them in a different room, obviously, than where you hang around in. And they are set up better for that. But you can do it in a regular cage if you want to. Now, what do you got to do to start them getting breeding? You got to buy nest box. Nest box are usually a square box, can be rectangular, it can be widthwise longer, and it has a hole in it where they can go in and out. Both of them. The female usually stays in the nest box most of the time, and the male comes in and out feeding her. Even after the baby's born, that's usually what happens. Now, the female will come out to eat and things like that, but most of the time they stay in the nest box. Now, again, you can find them on the internet. You can buy them in a pet store. You can find them on eBay. There's a lot of different places you can find them from other breeders that are not breeding anymore. And again, you can make them yourself. It's a little more involved to make them, but you can get a pattern to make them yourself. So it's not that hard to get. Now, where do you put them? You put them in a room that's darker. They need to be in a darker room. Not saying total darkness, but darker. You don't want them in a room where you're walking by all the time. They need to have time alone. So it is hard. You got to find maybe an extra bedroom, somewhere in the corner where you're not around them on a regular basis, somewhere where the TV's not on the time. They need to have quiet, and they can do their thing. So the best thing to do is in the bedroom that you put aside just for that reason. And you're going to want to have a blanket over them, not all the time, but on the one side, most 3 sides, but so they can have some light coming in. But most of the time it should be a little darker than normal, and try not to have lights around them, windows or lamps on if you can avoid it at all. But most of all, make sure it's a quiet place that you're not walking by. And you're going to want to check in on them all the time. I know I did. But only come around to give them food, freshen up their water, things like freshen up whatever the medium you have them sitting in. And in the nest box, you're probably going to want to have a shredded paper. You can put a lot of other things in there too, but shredded paper works very well. And it's what worked for me in the past. Now, after they have babies, when they lay an egg, and most parrots lay more than 1 egg. Larger parrots tend to only lay 1 egg, but the smaller ones can lay 3 or 4. Cockatiels can do that. Lovebirds can do that. But the larger birds, cockatoos, Amazons, macaws, tend to just do 1, maybe 2. Once in a while you have more. African grays, I once had one that had 3. She had 2, and then like a couple days later she had the 3rd one. So it was unusual. Usually they do it right at one time. But you can have more than 1. So after you leave them alone again, let her sit on the eggs in the nest box. And then eventually you're going to be wanting to check every once in a while. Hopefully you have the nest box set up in the cage where you can, like it's on the outside, where you can open the top of it just to check to see what's going on. Don't bother too much, but just check. I usually like to check maybe once every couple of days to see what's happening. It takes about 10 days on an average for the egg to start popping, the baby starts popping through the eggshell. And then once they are out of their nest box, out of their egg shell, the mother starts feeding them. Now there's a couple things you can do there. You can let the mother feed them most of the time, even until they're moving around and flopping their wings and stuff. Or you can let the mother feed the babies for a couple days so they get healthy, stuff from the mom, immunities, and then you take them out of the cage and you start hand feeding the babies yourself. This is what details a lot of time if you do it yourself, because you're going to be feeding those babies every 4 hours, a lot. And if you don't have that time, if you're working full-time during the day, you might have to bring those babies into work with you and feed them at work. If your job will let you do that. Otherwise, if you're a stay-at-home person, you can do that yourself. Another option is to pay somebody full-time to do it that can stay at home and take care of it. And it has to be somebody who knows what they're doing. My first time feeding my cockatiels, unfortunately, I didn't know what I was doing. I was stupid. and I killed a couple of them right away. There's two holes in their neck. One is for food and one is for water. And I put the food down the wrong thing, and it suffocated basically because it went in the lungs. One goes for air. So you got to know what you're doing. Make sure you get somebody to show you how to do that. You can find the information online. I'm sure on YouTube you can find some videos to tell you. But it's scary, and if you're going to do that, I would suggest doing it with a cockatiel or lovebird, not to make them any less important, but it's easier to lose a cockatiel than to lose a $1,500 bird, possible $1,500 bird. So be careful. But hand feeding, I found, was one of the most enjoying and warming thing to ever do. I love doing it, and it's a real good way to start socializing them. If you let the mother feed them, they don't get socialized as early as if you're hand feeding them. When you're hand feeding them, handling all the time and touching them all over their body, it makes them a lot tamer faster, and it's good. So I would suggest doing it yourself if you can, but if you can't, you're going to have to find somebody to do it. Check that person out. See some babies that person did feed before, and see how they turned out, if they're socialized properly. My last one that I did, I shared it with somebody else, and I let them have somebody hand feed them because I didn't have the time. And unfortunately, they did not handle the birds like I normally did. And the bird was kind of tame, but not as tame as when I did it myself. So if you can do it yourself, I suggest doing it instead of paying somebody else to do it. And so that's the hand feeding part. Now let's talk about socializing them. By socializing them, it's important to start socializing them right away, as soon as you can. And the way to do that is by doing it when you're hand feeding them. But once they are through the hand feeding process, and the mom will let you handle them, take them out of where their mom is and start holding them on a regular basis and get them tamed down. And they should be at least 2 months old, preferably 3 months old, before you find homes for them. And during that time, it's up to you to socialize them, because they're of no value as a pet to anybody unless they won't bite them, because nobody's going to want a parrot that's going to bite them. And you want them to be able to go right to the owners right away, and they can hold them. And they'll love that for you, and love the birds for that too. So it's important to socialize them right away. Now, the next step is, what do you do with them after you have babies? Well, you can sell them to a pet store if you want. You can make an arrangement with them saying you got these babies, and they might buy them from you. A lot of pet stores do that, have local people. A lot of times they already have people that they buy from, so they're not interested in getting other ones, but maybe you'll find somebody. Other way is you can advertise in the paper and sell them yourself. You can sell them on the internet, which I would not suggest unless you find homes locally. Don't put them in the mail or ship them to somebody. Don't do that. It's not good for them, and you never know what can happen to them in the mail. And if you care about your parrots, you don't want them to go to anybody where they might get hurt in the mail. Now, that's a problem in selling them yourself. You sell them to a parrot store, all they worry about is the money, how much money they're going to make off that parrot. And they don't care, whoever comes in with the money. They look halfway decent, they'll sell them the parrot. They don't care, it's money. If you sell them, it's up to you to be responsible. Check that person out. I always brought the parrot to them. I'd find out where they live, and I brought the parrot to them, see where they were, what kind of cage they intended to put the parrot in. Even then, you just never know what's going to happen to them. And a lot of times I wondered whatever happened to my parrots. I felt bad that I didn't check out better with that. And it's on you. If you care for your birds, you're going to want them to go to a loving home. And check those people out very carefully before you sell them to them. And afterwards, after your parrots have had their babies, you take the nest box out of the cage and you start giving the mother calcium again. Eggshells is a real good way of giving them calcium. And let her get healthy again. If you want to breed her again, you should wait at least 3 to 6 months before you do it again. Some people do it right away. I believe it's irresponsible to do that. If you have a lot of parrots, hopefully you can have a series of them and then come back, not keep them being bred. It makes for a less healthy pet and bird if they are on a regular basis bred, and the mom is not really good for her, and you should be responsible taking care of her. So maybe you won't ever have any more parrots. That's good. I mean, enjoy the parrots themselves, but if you want to keep in the business and you like doing that and you're not in it for the money, keep on doing it. It's fun. I enjoyed it very much, and it was very warming to hand feed them and find them homes. But again, I did worry sometimes. Now, is this what you want to do? Or did you have a good time? Did you have a good time doing it? Sorry, my dogs here are kind of messing up here. Think about it. If you're thinking about it, I would do it if you can. Sorry. I guess I'm going to have to end this. If you did get some good ideas out of this, give me a thumbs up. If you want to hear more, I try to download every Monday, and I will have more in the future about parrots. Come back and visit me, okay? Bye now.